Linda was supposed to be babysitting for a lady down the road, only a few houses away. And we came home and she hadn't come home.
Shush now. There's a good boy, eh?
Excuse me, love. I'm looking for Jackson's Lane. I turned off the main road and came down here. But now I'm lost.
You're way off. It's down the other side of the high street. What are you doing?
The body of a schoolgirl found murdered this morning has been named as 15-year-old Linda Mann from Narborough, Leicestershire. Linda's body was found just yards from her home by a passerby.
You have three villages. There's Enderby, Littlethorpe and Narborough. Small communities, all leading a very, very normal life. Law-abiding, good community people. And then suddenly this happens, this disaster within their midst happens.
It was a lovely atmosphere, very village, very community. Everyone helped each other. If you needed a hand, you knew who to go to.
This lane is known locally as the Black Pad. It's used mainly by people walking their dogs, pedestrians from Enderby and from Narborough.
It was unusual because she was always very good, always on time, or she would let us know if she was going to be late.
At that time of night he was taking a chance because usually this lane is fairly well used by people. He knew that it was getting dark. She was alone and the opportunity for him was there, and that's why he took it.
Well, we'd been up all night. I was looking out the window watching the children going to school, just thinking she might come back probably, you know, ready to go to school. She'd stayed at a friend's somewhere that we didn't know of. And police come to the door and asked us to sit down and just said, she's dead. We found her.
I think people believed that it was somebody local because of the location that Linda Mann was found in. It would have to be somebody who knew the area quite well.
It's 15 days after the rape and murder of Linda Mann, and people in the village of Narborough are living in fear.
I think young ladies should be very scared because we haven't found him, so we don't really know what's happening at all.
It was a topic of discussion in every pub, on every bus, in every street, not just in the village of Narborough or Littlethorpe or any of the areas around there, but across the whole of the county.
And police are keen to speak to anyone who saw Linda on the night she was murdered. The man leading the hunt, Detective Superintendent David Baker, has appealed to anyone who may have seen something to come forward.
There was no indication that it was anybody away from the area. We got no descriptions of the assailant or anything like that from witnesses, so we were very much in the dark as to who was responsible.
David telephoned and he said, "Paul, can you help? We're in a position that doesn't make very much sense to us at the moment." My view was that you were almost certainly looking at someone who was very local to the offence. This is a person who would be living in a stable relationship, but he's a man who is certainly going to be driven by a sexual fantasy cycle.
Pitchfork had a conviction for indecent exposure as a child, but it was when he was living out of the catchment area, when he was living in the city, which was totally away from areas where we were looking at. But of course, unbeknown to us, he was contemplating buying a house in Littlethorpe at that time.
Colin Pitchfork was well known in the local community. He worked at Hampshire's bakery, but he also had a sideline of making cakes for people, and quite a few people in the villages would have actually used his services for birthday cakes, wedding cakes and so on.
It was only on the house-to-house inquiries into the death of Linda Mann when he came in the system.
On the Linda Mann inquiry, once we'd moved on to the house-to-house inquiry teams, you break down into pairs and you work a set area. On January of 1984, myself and a colleague were sent to a new housing estate in Littlethorpe, into Haybarn Close, which turned out to be the home address of Colin Pitchfork.
Negotiations with union leaders on this issue. Locally, the brutal murder of 15-year-old schoolgirl Linda Mann continues to shock the community. Leicestershire police are today focusing their inquiries on the villages of Enderby, Narborough and Littlethorpe in an attempt...
Carol? Carol, have you seen the outlaws?
In the airing cupboard behind the towels, where they always are.
Ah, hello, madam. Sorry to bother you. Doing some inquiries into the murder of Linda Mann. I don't know whether you're aware of it. She was a 15-year-old girl.
Yes, I know about it.
Right, well, is your husband in? We need to ask him a few questions. Just routine.
Yes, he's upstairs. Come in.
Lovely, thank you.
Colin, some people to see you!
His wife answered the door and let us into the living room, and he was some time coming down. As it turned out, he was up in his loft laying stolen floorboards, and he was trying to compose himself before he come down and spoke to us.
All right there. Sorry to keep you waiting. I've been doing the floorboards in the spare room. Now rest for the wiki day.
No problem. What I need to do is go through this questionnaire with you, Mr. Pitchfork. Just ask you a few questions. Do you understand?
Yeah.
OK, could you tell me your whereabouts on the evening of the 21st November 1983 between 7 p.m. and midnight?
Bloody hell. I can't remember what I was doing last night, let alone last month. What sort of day of the week was it?
A Monday.
Monday? Oh, that's a stupid gym class, isn't it, love? So I was babysitting. Well, I was in all night. Isn't that right, love?
Come here.
Waste of time if you ask me.
What?
Well, going down the gym. She could go every day for a year, it wouldn't make the difference.
Right. So you can verify that your husband was at home looking after your baby?
Yeah.
On Monday the 21st of November?
Yeah, that's right.
There was no gut feeling there that you were dealing with somebody who was a bit wrong. There was no indication whatsoever that he was anything, worse than, any other chap.
Gradually, it grinded to a halt, but we continued to monitor, everything that went on.
Outside the community itself, in Leicester and the rest of the county, I think people had really started to forget about it.
Police this morning are stepping up their search for missing schoolgirl 15-year-old Dawn Ashworth, who went missing 2 days ago in the Leicestershire village of Enderby. Earlier, police said they were extremely concerned for the safety of Dawn and are appealing for any information that may lead to her safe return.
Here was a girl of the same age as Linda Mann, a girl on her own, going from A to B, and disappears. So consequently, we did treat it with a great deal of priority.
Dawn had been to see some friends in Narborough. She crossed the dual carriageway and then she walked up £10 Lane, and she'd got to perhaps halfway along when she was confronted by the man who indecently exposed himself to her. Sadly for Dawn, she panicked and ran through the gate into this field, and she ran into danger. He followed her into the field, spoke to her, told her all about himself, raped her, decided then he'd given too much information away, strangled her. and then dumped the body in some undergrowth.
The body discovered this morning by police in Enderby has been identified as that of missing schoolgirl Dawn Ashworth. 15-year-old Dawn went missing 2 days ago after failing to return from a friend's house. Some are already linking her murder with that of Linda Mann 4 years ago.
I warned her and warned her about the dangers of going down there on her own, but children of all ages, certainly when they're of Dawn's age, think they know best. And if there's a shortcut to be made on a bright summer's day, I'm sure they'd be sorely tempted to use it.
We've got to find the fiend, really, that did this to my daughter, to our daughter, and stop it from happening again.
People now really did believe, if they didn't before, that the killer was local, and that's the time when the police began to say, you know, we believe this is a local man.
Police today have a fresh lead in the Dawn Ashworth murder inquiry. A woman motorist travelling down the Leicester to Coventry road last Thursday saw a young man hanging around the path near to where Dawn was murdered.
We need to identify this individual and we need to talk to him.
A man called Buckland seen on his motorcycle near to the motorway bridge, which is at the entrance to £10 Lane, on several occasions. Buckland was seen wandering around the area.
What are you doing? Looking for a girl?
Buckland was going around telling people that the police were looking in the wrong area. He even told police officers looking for Dawn that they were looking in the wrong place.
Take your helmet off.
Buckland was a local lad who worked in the hospital in Enderby.
Richard what? Stay there, Richard.
There was something not right, something very strange.
We interviewed him and he couldn't give a very good account of where he was that afternoon, and in fact we were able to establish that a motorbike absolutely identical to his was parked under the motorway bridge, not far from where the body was subsequently found. We weren't satisfied with his explanations and a decision was taken to arrest him.
There was a sense of, thank God, you know, the man has been caught after all this time, and this will hopefully put an end to it.
Leicestershire police have today arrested a youth in connection with the murder of 15-year-old Dawn Ashworth, who was killed in Narborough 3 weeks ago. 17-year-old Richard Buckland, a kitchen porter also from Narborough, was arrested in a dawn raid on his home this morning. Richard Buckland, the 17-year-old youth arrested in connection with the murder of 15-year-old schoolgirl Dawn Ashworth, has today been charged with her murder. Police said Buckland had been identified by a number of witnesses close to the location where Dawn's body had been discovered, hidden in undergrowth in the village of Enderby.
As a result of being interviewed, he made certain admissions, and there came a time during those interviews where we had got to act on what he said, and we charged him with the murder of Dawn Ashworth. We then interviewed him regarding Linda Mann, but he totally denied any implication in it, and there was nothing whatsoever which we could attribute any responsibility whatsoever.
Both cases were virtually identical. The location of the bodies, the way they were killed, we knew it was the same man. But he refused, point blank, to admit to Linda Mann, which we knew was connected. And that is how the DNA first came in.
I'd heard about Alec Jeffrey's work. I think I'd read about it in the local paper, and so we contacted Dr. Jeffrey and asked him if he would do a DNA test for us.
They had a prime suspect who confessed to one but not the other of the murders, and they were then stuck. They really wanted some independent line of evidence that would establish that this person was indeed guilty, not just of the one murder, but of both murders.
We understood that he would be able, with the testing, to bring it down to one individual as opposed to a percentage of the population.
my initial reaction was, well, yes, we'll try, but don't hold out too much hope. Nobody's ever attempted this sort of analysis on relatively old, real forensic casework.
We had no knowledge whatsoever of DNA prior to that. We didn't know what it can do and what it can prove and what it can't prove.
DNA is a long strand, long molecule, which contains within it a code. And that's a code for how to construct a human being. Because all human beings aren't identical, then obviously their DNA cannot be identical amongst all people. If it were, we'd all be clones of each other. DNA fingerprinting looks at these spectacularly variable bits of DNA, which reveal the maximum information in one easy test about how people vary from one person to another. So we went into the analysis very skeptical. We did the extracting the DNA from all these samples. We went through the DNA profiling procedure, and the result that came through was extraordinary.
When the results came back, it was quite surprising, really, because, I mean, he eliminated Buckland from the murder of Dawn Ashworth, and we were forced to release him. But he also confirmed for us that one man was responsible for the two murders.
This is DNA taken post-mortem from the first victim, 2 bands, that's her DNA profile. The next track is the key forensic evidence. That was a semen sample recovered, together with some cellular material from the victim. And what you can see is in there, as expected, there's the victim's DNA profile, and in addition there are 2 bands up here which are the DNA profile from the semen. So we've now got DNA profile of the assailant. If you look at the second victim, this is her blood, her 2 bands. The pattern's completely different from patterns over here. And then here we have 2 very, very faint DNA profiles from trace semen recovered from her clothing. But even though they're very faint, because there's very little DNA, we can see a pattern which looks very, very similar to this pattern over here. And that was strong evidence that both girls have been raped and therefore presumably murdered by the same man. And then this is the prime suspect, Buckland. Here's his blood DNA profile. They're completely and utterly different from the semen profile from the victims. The prime suspect, in fact, was innocent, and this was a false confession.
Tonight's top story, 17-year-old Richard Buckland, accused of the murders of Dawn Ashworth and Linda Mann, has been released after 4 months in custody. Police tonight said the hunt continues for a murderer they say is a local man.
Yeah. Oi, feet.
The police have interviewed over 10,000 people and taken many more witnesses. Earlier this year they had blood tests.
They've let him go.
Linda's mother says
Who?
That lad that they had for that murder.
Just having no ending to it.
But if he wasn't the one, then now what?
How it's going.
I don't know.
I don't think they'll catch anyone till it happens again.
They just haven't got a clue, have they?
I believe the killer is a local man, and Linda's mother has this message for him.
I really can't answer the question as to why Buckland admitted to the murder. But he certainly did. He certainly made admissions, and of course the tape recordings substantiated those admissions.
Buckland has become the first man in criminal history to be cleared by genetic fingerprinting. But as he enjoys his first tastes of freedom, the question remains, why did he confess to the murder?
They say so much stuff to you like, you ain't gonna get out of here, and you might as well just own up. I thought, no chance, no way. Then the pressure started getting really hard. I just didn't stand a chance. So in the end, I just didn't bother.
The charge was dropped, the man was released from custody, and we were back to square one.
We knew quite categorically that we were looking for one person for 2 murders. There was every indication that a local person was going to be the perpetrator. In the light of what Alec Jeffries could supply us, I decided that we would incorporate a blood test for all the males who lived in the Narborough, Enderby, Littlethorpe areas.
David Baker, who was in charge of the investigation, then made what I thought was an incredibly brave step. And that's to say, let's not disbelieve in this technology, but let's believe in it. We have the DNA profile of the assailant. We're pretty sure it's a local man. So let's launch the world's first DNA-based manhunt and see if we can get as many blood samples voluntarily from people in the local community and see if we can flush this chap out.
It looked as though that if we pursued conventional means that we'd pursued to that time, there was no guarantee that we were going to get a result. So, you know, what we needed was this new technology to work for us and see if we could get one individual with the same blood type and DNA match, which is what we set out to do.
Detectives hunting a double sex killer want to use a revolutionary blood test on over 6,000 men. Police believe the killer of schoolgirls Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth can be trapped using a genetic fingerprinting test developed at Leicester University.
It is voluntary, and we are, you know, appealing to the people to come forward. It is purely for elimination purposes that we are taking these tests.
The plan is to test all men aged between 18 and 34 who live locally. Their blood and DNA will then be tested to see if it matches the profile of the murderer. Police say they are sure the killer is a local man, so by a process of elimination, the killer will be caught.
I think most people felt uneasy, perhaps, at what was going to happen, but at the back of some people's minds, I can imagine they must have thought, well, this has never been done before. How do we know they're not going to make a mistake?
It was all fairly new, and it hadn't been sort of like it is now on the television. Everybody knows how it works, but it was so new that it hadn't really been explained. But they said, as you say, it's like a fingerprinting. We believed in it. Even though we didn't know much about it, we believed that this was going to work.
The world's first DNA manhunt is underway. Thousands of men from the villages of Narborough, Littlethorpe and Enderby have this week been attending voluntary blood tests in an attempt to catch the killer of 2 Leicestershire schoolgirls.
Did you have any doubts about coming tonight?
Not at all, no. I think the person responsible might have.
All men aged between the ages of 18 and 34 have received a letter asking them to attend a screening.
In setting out your parameters or what have you, there is a degree of apprehension that have you cast your net in the right area? You know, is he within the area or have you just missed him?
But why not?
It's a flashing. Don't you know? Are you totally bloody stupid? The police are going to take one look at America and give me all sorts of trouble.
But that was years ago. It won't be a problem. And anyway...
You don't know them. They're looking for somebody. Anybody.
Well then, give them the blood. It's not you they're looking for, is it?
No! But in the meantime, they'll give me all sorts of bloody hell.
People talked about the process being, you know, fairly simple. It wasn't a big thing. It wasn't a big issue. I think most people perhaps felt a relief once they'd been and had it done, and then people were returning home and awaiting the results. Who was the killer? It was, you know, perhaps almost like an announcement was going to be made any time. Once everybody had been tested, there would be no doubt who the murderer was.
But all the time we were doing the blood test, we were worried he would strike again. And we didn't want to have a third victim on our hands.
What I knew is there's a cyclical element in it, that his urge has built and risen so that Linda Mann is killed. It then becomes quiescent, it becomes quiet for a while, and then gradually the appetite builds again and again. And you then know that it's going on to the third victim after a suitable period of rest.
I'd been out with friends in Wigston for a drink. I got separated from my group of friends and made the decision to leave and walk on my own home.
Can you give us a lift home?
Sure. Where are you going, me duck?
Are you going to Oby?
I'm going up the A6 there, Neil.
Great. Hey, you're not a rapist, are you?
Get in.
That was my, not sense of humour, but my sort of me at the time. And he, I don't honestly remember what he replied, but he gave a reply such that I decided, yeah, I'll be all right, I'll get in. Got in and did the seatbelt up, and at that second I knew I was in danger.
What's your name?
Liz. Where do you live?
What?
Well, you said Enderby was on the way to where you were going.
I looked up at him and saw his dead stare and just realised I'd made a big mistake getting in the car.
That's the turning there.
It was only as he passed the road of my house that I realised that my worst fears were coming true, that he wasn't going to let me out the car.
Go back! I want to get out!
There came a point when I decided I'd had enough and that I just was going to get out no matter what, and that's when I steered the car off the road.
There, turn in!
What the bloody hell are you doing, a crash? I thought this is what you wanted.
All I want is to go home.
Got a bit of a drink, see, I'll get a bit carried away.
I can drive if you've been drinking.
The psychologist said that because he was a controlist and he was he was taking control of me in the situation, because I broke his control. It spoilt it for him.
I've not hurt you.
Just let me out!
Give us a kiss then.
Just let me out!
I totally believe that what I did probably saved my life. I never did contact the police. I felt rather not stupid, just that I'd made a mistake, something that I wanted to forget about, really. I didn't tell anyone.
I bet you never accept a lift again.
Thousands of men in the Leicestershire area. After 7 months of blood testing, police have so far failed to catch the killer of 2 Leicestershire schoolgirls. So far, over 5,000 men aged between the ages of 17 and 35 have been tested, but as yet, the killer remains undetected.
It was a slow process. I mean, we'd started in the January, and of course we're now into July, August, and I mean, we're still taking samples, and we're still having samples processed. So, I mean, you know, we didn't know whether there was one in the system from the samples that we'd already taken.
The operation was absolutely massive. Over a period of 4 or 5 years, people had moved all over the country. So the fingerprinting had to be carried out literally all over the UK. People were returning, having had their own tests done, telling their own families about the process and so on. And obviously the topic of discussion when they went to have their test was always the murders.
I don't fancy it myself.
That's fine, it's fine. It's got to be done, though, isn't it?
I don't know.
No, the rubbish. I got a letter about one of those tests.
So when are you going in then?
I'm not me. Them coppers stitch you up as soon as look at you.
You're not scared of a little prick, are you, Colin? It's only a few coppers and a needle. I'll tell you what, I'll come with you, shall I? Hold your hand.
The only little prick around here is you. And if you don't watch your mouth, you'll be getting more than a jabbing, you know.
He knows that he really has only got a few choices. Either he comes forward and his sample is taken and he's immediately identified as being the offender, or he says, no, thank you, I won't come forward. In which case, he makes himself stand out as one of the very small number of people who haven't offered their sample, and so he picks himself out for investigation. And that leaves just 2 alternatives. One is that he flees, and that again attracts attention. And the other one, the one that I thought is the most likely, is that this is a man who will have someone substitute for himself in giving a sample.
He was just a work colleague. He worked at the same place as me, and that was it. I didn't know him particularly, no. Just knew him at work.
We realised from the outset that there was a great chance that someone would try and beat the system.
No harm done, eh?
Thanks, Colin.
Hey, would you do us a favour?
What?
I can't take this test.
Why not?
I've already done it. See, there's this bloke, he's a mate of mine, and, well, he got into a spot of bother when he was young from flashing and robberies and that. And he's scared that the police are going to pick him up because of his record. Well, he talked me into doing the test for him.
I don't know, Cole. Why don't you just explain to them that you can't do it?
Don't be daft. They wouldn't swallow that. Besides, I don't think they're going to bother much with me, because I didn't even live in the village when the first girl was killed. But now I've got this letter, and, well, I'm in trouble because of him. You wouldn't do it for me, would you?
Oh, no. I don't know, Cole. I couldn't do that. I mean, I can understand the trouble you're in and that, but, you know, I just can't. It's got nothing to do with me. You know, I'd like to help you out and all, but I can't do it. Why don't you ask someone else?
Who is he not going to choose? Well, he's not going to choose someone who's going to be unduly critical. He's not going to choose someone who's going to be unduly questioning. He's going to choose someone who thinks that they are going to be helping a friend, getting one over on something, who is sufficiently bright and intelligent to carry it off, but not so questioning as to say there's something not quite right here.
It went on for about 6 weeks, like. He kept pestering, but I didn't know he'd asked anybody else. So, and the reason he gave me was he'd done it for somebody else. And he'd got 2 kids and his wife. And that was the general reason. So I kept saying, no. That was... I don't think he picked on me for any reason. I think he just picked on anybody he could get hold of at the time to do it for him.
All right, Paul. No messing there. I need your help.
Cole, look, I told you I couldn't do it all right.
27th. I've got to give blood on the 27th. Now, why won't you do it?
It's not right. Break the law and that.
I thought we was mates.
Ah.
I did it for this other bloke and I didn't know him near as well as you know me. I might get nicked if they find out that I've given blood twice.
Look, I can't do it, all right?
I've got kids. You ain't got kids, have you? Have you?
No.
Right. Well, now you can help me out. What do you say?
Yeah, OK. If you get off in the back.
Good lad. Right. Now meet me after work, and we'll go to the photo booth at the station.
Why?
Don't ask questions. I've got to get this right.
I was worried that what I was doing was wrong, but I thought I was doing it. I felt sorry for him, and that's the only reason I did it. I felt sorry for his kids, that was why I was doing it, but I didn't got any clue that he had anything involved in it or anything.
Every suspect who came in to be blooded had to have their passport with them. If they didn't have their passport with them, a photograph was taken with the name and address put on the back, and it was verified later with one of the neighbours. But it wasn't anticipated that he could get away with that. We felt that we'd covered it.
We went to a photo booth because we had to get a photo for the passport. I'd been ill. I weren't very well. I'd been to the doctors. I was on antibiotics. I got a bad chest infection. I felt so rough, I weren't interested. While I was having the photos, Colin stood outside. He wanted the photo so he could change his for mine, so nobody then identify him at all.
How long does it take?
2 or 3 minutes. Are they all right?
Yeah. They're all right, then.
Come on, give it to me. Come on.
Bearing in mind that he was a master baker, very adept at icing specialty cakes, So therefore he got this nimbleness within his fingers. And the way he did it was he steam ironed the plastic coating off, very carefully manipulated off his photograph, put the other photograph on and reversed the system and ironed it back on. And it's only if you look very, very carefully that you can see the alteration.
He said, just remember what my name is and how old he was. I said, fair enough. So we got in the car. He dropped me about, I'd say about 20 yards from the door in this school. I walked in, more or less straight away. I just sat there. I said there was people beside me, like, but I weren't taking any interest. Because all I felt like doing was just go to there, get it done, come out.
Mr. Pitchfork. Colin Pitchfork. Colin Pitchfork. Mr. Pitchfork, please. Colin Pitchfork.
Oh yeah, that's me.
Can I see your ID, Mr. Pitchfork, please? Thank you.
Alan, have you got any more of those address forms?
I have, I'll bring them through. Yeah. Thank you. Can you follow me, please? This is Dr. Williams.
I went over to the end cubicle in the far corner. I sat on a chair. There was a doctor and there was a police officer.
16 Harebrand Cross. And whereabouts is that? Little Thorpe.
Are you left or right-handed?
Left-handed.
OK, just pop your right hand on the table. OK, can I ask you just to pump your right hand? That's great. Sharp scratch.
They took some blood and said that was it, and I just walked out.
He was just a fool. He was manipulated by him and allowed himself to be manipulated by him.
And with the number of blood tests taken by the police reaching the 6,000 mark, some are questioning whether this complex process will ever lead to the apprehension of the killer. Local MP Nigel believes that the police are doing everything...
Hi, love. How'd it go? I thought they just pricked your thumb.
Nah, they used a needle and they stick it in your arm. And I didn't like the attitude of them coppers. Treated me like a criminal, they did.
Still, all over now. Now, what on for tea? Fish fingers or hamburgers? Sweet corn or baked beans?
I didn't go into work for about half a week after. Well, he'd been into work and he told everybody he'd done it. Now, if I'd have gone into work and he'd gone round telling everybody that he took a blood test, I'd have gone up to him and said, "Oh, hold on a minute. Why are you going around telling everybody you took it when I've took it for you?" And then probably everything would have come out.
It was very sad when, having gone through this huge exercise and done all this blood group typing and all this DNA typing, at the end of the day, they had nobody.
It was frustrating because we knew he was in the system. We knew he was there, somewhere he was there.
This was the first criminal investigation that DNA had ever been used in, and I had a concern that, you know, the public's perception of DNA was, here's a flash technology that's useless.
And what we were conscious of was that if somebody else took a sample for someone, then somebody else was in the know and that information may come to us.
The risk is it's the time scale. We know this man is a serial killer, and the great tension is which comes first. Is it the person who can no longer retain the confidence, or is it the urge that will lead to the third victim?
The hunt for the sex killer of 2 Leicestershire schoolgirls continues. In the past 7 months, more than 6,000 blood tests have been carried out on men in the Leicestershire area. Police are now casting their net nationwide in the search for men who have moved away from the area in the last 4 years.
It wasn't a question of we'd missed him. I mean, we were still feverishly gathering samples, hoping that we were going to strike lucky.
We'd gone so far, we hadn't got a positive result, but there was an underlying belief, and a strong belief, that he was in the system somewhere. It was a matter of having a bit of luck, if you like, and the luck did come.
I'm sitting in this pub with other work colleagues. The conversation come round to Colin Pitchfork for some unknown reason. Either she didn't like him or something.
His poor wife. I mean, if it was me, I'd kill him.
Dirty bugger.
He can't keep his hands off women. That's what his problem is. It always has been. I tell you, that Pitchfork is a wrong un.
My friend said something and he said, well, he asked me to take a blood test. And I turned around and said...
Yeah, I took that test for him.
What test?
The murder inquiry, that one.
Yeah.
For about 2 or 3 seconds, the conversation went quiet.
Does anyone want another drink?
Yeah, same again,
yeah,
please.
go on then. So where did she used to work then?
I just said it and that was the end of it. I mean, if somebody had turned around and said, well, do you realise what you've said? Then I probably would have... Well, what do you mean? Well, then I probably would have realised, like...
Eventually, this person is going to need to tell somebody. He's going to want his share of, hey, look at what I've done, you know, I'm all right, aren't I? He's going to need the reinforcement, a little bit of buzz, and someone's going to hear that and send it back to the police.
A young woman who was in the party, listened to what was said, was aware of the implications in it, and of course she is a catalyst of telling us.
All I know is she just kept worrying about it and worrying about it.
All right, check it off.
Colin?
To the point where she got that worried that she had to go and say something to somebody.
Hello? Is that the police? It's about their murders. I don't want to bother you. It's probably just nothing.
I was in the murder incident room when the call came through.
It was a breakthrough, if you like, that we, in fact, were waiting for.
It was good information. Nobody could make that kind of information up.
We knew when that information came that if that was the case, there was something not quite right.
We knew then we were on a certainty. It was definitely Pitchfork. We waited for about 3 or 4 hours for him. That was the most agonising long wait of my life.
All right, boys, get ready.
Just to look at him and think, this man has killed 2 people. And here he is, arriving at his home with his wife, unaffected by what's been going on.
Go, go, go.
Colin? Colin, what's going on? Colin? What's going on?
I knew, even before he even opened his mouth, he'd done it.
You're not obliged to say anything.
Tell me why is
but
it
anything
going
you do say
on?
may be taken
Colin,
and used
please.
as evidence. Do
Please
you
give me
understand?
a few minutes with the wife, will you?
All right. All right.
going
A
on?
few minutes.
They've come to arrest me
What for?
for their murders.
But you took the blood test and we got a letter back saying it was negative.
I didn't do it.
Did you do it, Colin?
Come on, we'll talk
Colin,
about this
did you kill those girls? Did you do it?
Yes.
Did you?
Take it out of it.
Bastard!
Get him out! Get him out!
Police have revealed the identity of the man arrested yesterday for the double murders of 2 Leicestershire schoolgirls. Colin Pitchfork from Littlethorpe has undergone DNA testing and matches the samples left by the killer. Police also said that another man from Leicester has been arrested in connection with the murders.
I felt sick, gutted. Well, there's no words can describe what I felt. Because if I'd have known, I wouldn't have done it. Let's put it that way.
We were very pleased because it was the culmination of some 4 years' work.
The feeling that, yeah, we were right, it was in the system, but we flushed him out there in a way that we didn't expect.
The test flushed him out. Otherwise, he would have still been sitting there. If we hadn't have been taking blood samples, he would have, been bluffing it out that he was at home, and we couldn't shift him on that.
The actual genetic fingerprinting didn't catch Colin Pitchfork. It was me saying something in a pub, and that's what caught him.
At Leicester Crown Court today, Colin Pitchfork was sentenced to 2 life sentences for the rape and murder of Linda Rosemary Mann in 1983 and Dawn Amanda Ashworth in 1986. Pitchfork's work colleague, who took a police blood test on his behalf, was also found guilty of perverting the course of justice and given an 18-month suspended sentence.
When he went down, and I was the only one on the street that could get at, that was it. I mean, you couldn't even walk on a bus without somebody saying a slider remark or anything. I mean, I once nearly got stabbed, because a lot of people think I was there when he actually killed him. Well, I wasn't. I didn't even know him. And what can I say to him? I mean, he's ruined my life, so that's the end of that.
Had we not been able to identify him and arrest him, he would have continued with this course of conduct and was well on the way to becoming a serial killer.
He showed no feelings whatsoever. He seemed to be able to justify everything that he'd done without any feeling.
For a man to be able to do what he did, and when he was asked why, he just said because she was there. I mean, what kind of man is that?
Genetic scientist Professor Alec Jeffreys was today knighted for his work in the development of DNA genetic fingerprinting. Following its use to catch murderer Colin Pitchfork in Leicester in 1987, it's become a major weapon for the police in their fight against crime.
Even when we came at our first DNA fingerprint, never in my wildest dream did we think that this sort of general area of technology is going to have the impact that it subsequently proved to have. I mean, I've been told many times by police that they regard the development of DNA typing as providing them with the most powerful scientific tools in the fight against crime that they have ever had.
It's nice to know that you were part and parcel of the beginning of the DNA testing, because it's proved invaluable in all sorts of inquiries.